Folks, welcome to another exciting episode at Vinyl Latte. Louis V here with the man himself, Mr. Joe Friday. Welcome to the program, Joe.
The man himself. I love that. How you doing, man?
Man,
Good
I'm
seeing you,
doing
Louis.
good.
Good seeing you, pal.
It's good seeing you, and I just wanted to thank you for coming on here today to talk a little about some of the projects you've been working on and what some of the cool things are up and coming. But before we dive into all that, do you mind sharing a little bit about yourself and about Friday Music?
I was born 39 years ago. Right. No, I've been in the music business since I can remember, starting from a little kid through high school, through college, eventually scoring my first label gigs, probably right out of college. Worked for, I worked for a distributor called Schwartz Brothers, which eventually became ADA, which is part of Warner Brothers today. Which is funny because I wound up being distributed through ADA for a long time when I first started the label. So there's some interesting things there, but history is played in bands, tried everything to be a recording artist. Didn't work out that way. I did some records, I did some things. Wound up playing with some bands, some successful bands. I did backup work, some production work. And then I wound up getting in these labels. In between all that, I was working at labels. I worked for MCA Records for a very long time, RCA, worked for Warner Group with Atlantic, East West, and then started Friday Music. I think our first releases were Triumvirate, Flash, and a couple of Guess Who albums, mostly CDs we did initially. And then we started becoming like a prog rock label because I love prog. And we got to sign catalog for two of my favorite groups. That's Procol Harum. I love Procol Harum. And Man for Man's Earth Band. And that kind of set the stage for a long rally of like people coming to buy our music because we focused on stuff that was just gone and not out there really that much anymore. Definitely in North America. European and Japan and French, they have a more of a taste for eclectic music and it stays in print much longer. But we were not, this country hasn't been serviced well for a long time until guys like I came into being. There were a couple other good prog labels, but I really went after some of that deep stuff, and it just changed history for me because we're in business, 2 decades later, and it's been this flip to vinyl more or less since early 2000s. I really went full tilt vinyl, and we were like the first guys to really get into that. There was some, there was always some of the other big 3 or 4 vinyl manufacturing labels that are out there, but we deep dove into like deep catalog and things, and we still do. So that's kind of what we do. I put music out that I love, and it's like my record collection, and I want to share it. That's kind of like the I don't know if that's any way other better than saying it, and that's what it is.
I mean, I think that's the way to do it when you have a label, right? Is to focus on the music you love. You can't go wrong with a curation of releases that is around music that you're actually passionate about and that you're excited to do the projects on. I mean, that's got to make it a lot more fun.
Well, I was recently visited my junior high school. Junior high? No, I visited my elementary school, actually. I went back to Philly for the first time in years. And I just drove by. Todd Rundgren went to this school, which is kind of funny because he's on my record label too with a lot of releases. And I knew Todd as a kid growing up. He's older than I am, but he knew my brothers and all went to the same high schools and junior highs and elementary schools. So I went stopped by this place to take a picture of it, and I wound up going inside. Everything obviously changed. But I went back to this elementary class, my kindergarten class, and took a picture of it, and that's where everything started. I mean, I remember bringing in records to play in school for like playing show or show and play, whatever. And I had a great music teacher, and she would let me bring records in. I would bring in the Doors. This is in 3rd grade, 4th grade. The Beatles, obviously, Canned Heat, all this crazy stuff. And I was telling this principal there, I used to do this stuff, and I just went to tell him who I was. I said, and it just blew the guy's mind. So he took me like on a 50-cent tour, and then he shows me this room, which used to be like a science class or something, and in fifth grade, I brought my power trio in there. This is really weird. And we did Can Heat's Let's Work Together, and we did Wipeout by the Safaris. I was a guitar player, we had this drummer and a bass player, or another guitar player, two guitars and drums. There's no bass. And the kids went nuts. I mean, that was the bug, but I was always doing music stuff. And one of the big issues was, I think in the fourth grade, I was always drawing album covers and record labels. I would even do like the side panel with the serial numbers and the catalog numbers, and the album covers always had pictures of John Lennon or Frank Zappa because they were easy to draw. Long hair, glasses, skinny face, or just a beard and a mustache. So I was always drawing Zappa and Lennon. Somewhere I got these things, these sketches somewhere, but I got tossed out of class in fourth grade. They
Oh,
called my parents up like I wasn't paying attention. No, I was paying attention. I was ahead. I wasn't. I knew math. I knew all that. I was bored. It's just like I gotta
you're
get.
bored.
So I was drawing records. I would listen to at the house, and I created my own record label in my head and my music. So I was always geared for this, And later in life, working for all the record labels, the same thing. So to anybody out there that just it's young and they want to get into this, and don't let anybody tell you no. Number one, if you really love it, you stick with it. It's not easy, but
Mhm.
nothing's easy. It's successful. It's just not that way, especially in music. But I worked for every major record label. I've pretty much worked for every major group between the early 80s up until the mid 2000s. Personal friends with a lot of people. And that's helped us along the way. I mean, there's some really great cats that helped me get records and helped me get started initially and then still do, So
Joe, you kind of were teasing a little bit about some of the upcoming projects. Maybe we could talk a little bit about some of your projects. What other recent projects are you working on that we can expect?
Thin Lizzy, they're going on 5 decades, right? And we're going to reissue with through Rhino. We're going to do all the Warner era albums again, and I think I got some prototypes here. Hold on, yeah, here we go. Like we're gonna jump back into Chinatown. This will be on red vinyl. Okay, while you're with me, stay there, folks, because I know we have a lot of Thin Lizzy fans because they email me all the time. But we're doing anyway. We're doing Live and Dangerous again, Life again. Renegade, Thunder and Lightning, Black Rose. So you'll see those again in the new year. We've been very successful with hair bands and metal and hard rock since we started with the Deep Purple projects and the Alice Cooper albums a couple of years back. And you'll see for the first time on vinyl in a long time the Zebra album that was on Atlantic. Great band out of New York, Power Trio, 1983 album. We're going to do it on black and white, gray kind of mix, kind of like a zebra, right? Vinyl. And then we're doing the Kicks album, Hotwire, which never saw a North American release. We're going to do it on this really cool solar flare vinyl. And I'm already seeing, people are ordering it already on the pre-order, which is it's great. Kicks are such a great band. I worked with them at Atlantic, and that was the album I promoted. We had a song called Girl Money. I really wanted to work Same Jane. We wound up putting it out as a second single. And then the label went away and became Elektra. It got absorbed by Elektra and Atco. And it was East West. It was like a short lived label. I think it lasted, I think I was there like 4 months. And the day they went out of business, I had already gotten a job at RCA. I was at RCA for like 7 years. And that's another story. But I'm putting out albums that I worked. That's the other thing what we do here. I put out albums I've either promoted at radio, worked with the band, has something to do with the band, has something to do with the artist, has something to do with the manager. I always have a story to something. But the Kicks album Hotwire is a great, great heavy rock album. Girl Money was the hit. Same Jane was a follow up. Cold Chills is on there. It's just and they just gave it up about a year ago. They called it a day. They've been together like 50 years, man, almost, I think. And they called it a day. And their show was sold out. Their shows were sold out everywhere. They sold out the Meriwether Post Pavilion, which is, I think 20,000 seats or something. And we put out Kicks Cool Kids recently. We did a Hot Wire. Now we did Blow My Fuse. We're going to be doing the first Kicks album. We're going to be doing the live album. So that's another band I'm very excited about. We're going to be jumping more in the White Lion. So you're going to see a lot of the metal stuff from the 80s and 90s. A lot of it was never on vinyl because it was a CD age and cassettes. So there wasn't a lot of vinyl on these artists. So I'm looking forward to those. They'll be really neat.
Yeah, and thank you for giving them the attention that they deserve and releasing it actually on vinyl. I'm one of those guys that, yeah, you can go buy the CD or you can go stream it, but I don't know. I don't have that connection with the music when I'm just putting on a CD or just streaming. But a record forces you to engage with the music, to listen to it, because at least every 20 minutes or so you're getting up to flip the damn thing anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like you could just get lost doing something else. It just forces you to sit down and appreciate the music. So I appreciate you giving it attention, but I do want to call out something I think is unique with Friday Music and the records that you release, is that you mentioned it, you have history associated with a lot of the records and the bands that you're releasing, which I think is a little bit different because it must take on some level of like a personal element. It's not just, hey, I'm releasing this and I'm just doing it because of just simply transactional. There's a connection with you with the music. It goes far beyond just a business transaction.
Again, when I started this thing, it goes back to the music, goes back to hearing records in the fourth grade, fifth grade, 10th grade, college. I mean, I'll sit with artists that either I wrote an article on them in a college newspaper. I wrote for MTV. They had a little magazine called Rock Bill when they first year of existence, I think 81. I was in college. I was submitting articles to that. They were getting published. So I kind of had a little buzz around me as far as journalistic, like you're doing. I had that going on in college and right out of college. And I was interviewing different people and putting stuff. Well, a lot of stuff wound up on the record label. I mean, I could show you, whatever it is. This was a big deal this year. We did the Sweetheart of the Rodeo reunion, 50th anniversary with Roger McGuinn and Chris Hillman, right? And we sold this out. This is our RSD piece. We're going to be coming back. We actually have a box set, which, if you're a Byrds fan, there's not money left. Go to the site. We got a box set, autographed poster, numbered, goes with this, backstage pass, and a T-shirt from the tour, the actual tour from 2018. But this was a surprise because I've worked with Chris Hillman and the Byrds stuff and Roger McGuinn. I put out mostly every Byrds album that was ever out on Sony, Columbia, and then we put out the Asylum album, and we started having conversations like about a year and a half ago, that there was this tape that existed of his performances on the tour, which were all sold out with Marty Stewart and the Fabulous Superlatives being the backup band. Marty's one of the fronts. And I got the tapes. I said, oh man, this is great. So myself, Chris Hillman and his wife, Roger, and Marty's team, we assembled this album, and it just blew out. The record store is sold out. And I had to make the CD because people want the CD. Want to, a lot of folks don't have, turntables. So we recently manufactured a CD too, which you can buy online through us, and it's doing well. And there's another project coming from that team, most of them anyway. Chris is coming back with something pretty soon. We're working on together right now. I could discuss it in one of our next conversations, but. I've known Chris Hillman and Roger McGuinn since high school. I would interview them. I would hang at McGuinn would be doing a show at the Main Point Club in Bryn Mawr, or Chris Hillman would, or he'd be out there with the Desert Rose Band, or I wound up working with later at MCA when I lived in Nashville, and they asked me to promote. I got sent down to MCA Nashville because we were in MCA in LA, and Irving Azoff was in charge of everything. He brought me to MCA with a guy named Steve Meyer. God bless them both. I was 23 at the time, I think. And we just put out Southern Accents by Tom Petty, Glenn Frey, the All-Nighter. I forget what else was happening at that point. This is prior to like Miami Vice. This is right around the time of Miami Vice. They had hit it. They were like, we were in a conference it was like Christmas. I'll never forget this. And we had this meeting, and it was like, what else could we break? There's got to be more music. We have all this great music at this label. Anything else we should be looking at? And like a 20-year-old kid would that had brains raises his hand and says, we have some wonderful country artists. We should try crossing this stuff over to top 40 and rock. And everybody looked at me like I was a jerk. And yeah, I get it. I mean, minutes later, they're flying me down to Nashville. So here I am, a 23, 24-year-old guy, and just new to the whole city. I'm in Nashville, and it's like, wow, you know. And I get down there, I'm hanging with Waylon Jennings, man. We had albums with Waylon. I knew a Steve Earle before he was a Steve Earle because I helped get him to rock radio with his Guitar Town album, Exit Zero. Then he wound up hitting platinum with Copperhead Road. Lyle Lovett was an aspiring songwriter. One album was being made. I was working with Lyle Lovett and the Desert Rose Band, Chris Hillman. So they asked, what do you think you can cross? I said, well, we'll try a couple. Well, I'm having some success at modern rock would have been called alternative stations at that point. More, they weren't really Americana at that point. There really wasn't an Americana scene at that point. It was either rock or alternative, pretty much at radio. And I was getting these guys played like at on alternative, like oh, I Love It and Steve Earle. Steve Earle wound up crossing into rock mainstream because I Ain't Ever Satisfied was huge. It's like top 10. Exit Zero album did real well, and then Copperhead Road was bigger. But that whole country thing, I work with everybody. And here I am now. I'm back in Nashville. Time to time, I have a studio there now, and I do work there, and I come back and forth every month, or whatever. And I'm doing a Chris Christopherson album in the new year, a Salary Hillman Furay band album, first time on vinyl in like 50 years. But the Chris Christopherson's really great because there's bonus tracks. It's his favorite album. He redoes all his songs with Mark Knopfler, Jackson Brown, Mark Cohn, Alison Cross. It's a dynamic recording by my Fred Mullen, who produced it. It was on Atlantic CD only like 100 years ago, 1999, and we just went back in there. And Fred does such a magnificent job of production. And I interviewed him to put on my channel at some point before the release, but we got into the meat and potatoes about this album, and it was Chris always wanted to have an album like Blonde on Blonde, Dylan. So they went for that, and they got it. And Vince Gill's singing on it, and the stories back and forth about how great that session went. Chris said it was the best album he ever made, and we have it.
We're looking forward to it. What do you? Let me ask you this, Joe. There's folks that like me. I'm doing some holiday shopping, looking for some records that I want to spend some of my Christmas money on. What are you excited about? What do you think people when they go to FridayMusic.com?
Well, this year, I went back and just thought of like my favorite albums, and I think this year we nailed some really great ones, and just the feedback we get, from folks. I mean, I'll bring up one right now. This is a great album, Al Stewart's Year of the Cat. The Crescent, I think this is, this is the gold version of it. We did it on clear red, and we did it on metallic. Well, it's actually clear gold. Again, I worked with Al Stewart. I worked his records, and Alan Parsons produced this, and I'm friends with Alan Parsons. I actually trained in his certification class for Atmos and Dolby and all kinds of other mixing things. So Alan's just stellar guy. So's Al Stewart. But I will tell you, this is one of the best albums I think ever made, and the audience is blown away. I mean, a lot of people forgot what was on this album and how great it is. There's a resurgence of Alan Parsons now. He's playing sold out shows everywhere, and he could do a greatest hits show if there's other songs he produced on people, not even his hits, and have a scorecard like you wouldn't believe. But Year of the Cat will make everybody happy. For the metal folks, we dived into Frehley's Comet, Ace Frehley, with his second album and his first album, somewhere here. This is these stuff. Yeah, Ace Frehley is loved. I mean, we get all kinds of thumbs up from folks on that. The other two guys here that these are no brainers. You asked me to bring some vinyl to the party, so
I did. Is that Ace on color vinyl or is that standard black?
every vinyl variant is different. You're not going to get this if you buy two copies of the album. The other album is not going to be the same color. It's going to be a variation. Like say it has blue and red in it. It's going to have maybe more red and some swirls that the other one doesn't have. It's like a hand dipped, hand dipped ice cream or something kind of effect. And people just love it, man. I mean, it's a new process. I think it looks cool and it sounds great. But yeah, the Aces are blowing out. We're coming with Trouble Walking in the new year, and again in two shades. And then we're going to come with Ace Live Plus. It's called Live Plus One. It was an EP. It's now a full length album because we found two more tracks to add to it, and some more artwork. And that's going to be another. That's probably going to come out in April, I'm thinking.
Is that a first with the 2 additional tracks, or?
It's the first time. Yeah, it's never been on vinyl like that. And I think it's from Agora Ballroom. The other tracks, I believe, are from Hammersmith in London that we found in the vaults. So it's cool. It's going to be a great release. But we started Friday Music Vinyl with the Doobie Brothers Minute by Minute, and it's been out of print for a while. And I went back, and now we put the joint inside. We made a gatefold, right? And we put the joint like right there. But this is the album I kicked off the vinyl craze with, and we really did start the vinyl craze for mainstream people. And this is the first album I picked. It was my band of choice when I was in college, and they're some of the nicest guys in the world. I mean, Pat and Tom, and of course Michael McDonald, and some of the other fellas aren't with us today. Just really great guys. John McPhee's a great guy. Their manager, Bruce Cohen's a great guy. But this album, I don't know, if you want to sum up, I hate the word yacht rock, but this, and I had Silk Degrees out by Boz Scaggs a few years back, one of my favorite artists as well. We've done every Boz Scaggs record. Those two albums significantly are for that fan and for anybody who loves great sounding music. But this is a cool album, and it's doing quite well, right? And then my buddy Lee Lockname from Chicago and we master together all the Chicago product. And we're using the original 1969 recordings to make Chicago 1. And we just put this out, and it's on a really sharp, deep red. You can see this, folks. I don't know. Anyway, very pretty red. I mean, these are two gotta have Christmas albums. Under the Tree, nobody's going to be disappointed because two of the biggest albums ever made, And what I tell you, that's for the mainstream guy. If you're looking to add 2 albums to your collection or 1 album to your collection that represents the band that we have here. These 2 albums significantly call it. But I remember when they came in, I was just so blown away.
As me, as somebody who is you could see I'm an avid record collector myself. I love the fact that you're focusing on stuff that's just hard to find.
The Monkees, I'll leave you with this. We're doing 3 of their rarest albums in order. We're going to be. We just released Pull It. We just released Changes on Aqua and on Clear Red. It was their last album on Cold Gems from 1970. It was basically an album where they were done. The Monkees were done, and I think CBS had the cartoons channel going on Saturday and Sunday mornings. I think it was ABC first, then CBS television was running the old Monkey shows during cartoon breaks, and it became a new audience of like 4-year-olds and 5-year-old kids. They were doing Kool-Aid commercials and games and things, and it was basically Mickey and Davy, still around. And Mike was like, "I'm done with this." He's doing country music, and Peter Tork had a new band that I don't know if they ever recorded anything, but the 2 of them were asked, "Do you want to come back and cut some new tracks?" And they did, and it was supposed to be a Andy Kim album. Great songwriter, great singer, had a bunch of hits in the 70s. I think they just pulled his voice off of some of the things. The other things were recorded for. A couple other things were in the vaults. and it's a pretty cohesive album. It's kind of like the Beach Boys 2020, where they just found some things and assembled an album, and they got it out there. And Cold Gems went away during that time, and it became Bell, then it became Arista Records. But that album, I think it was out for like 2 days. They pulled it off the shelves. It was the hardest album by the Monkees to find. So we're revisiting it now, and it sounds so much better. The tapes were so great and vibrant. They're just much brighter and better sounding. It's beautiful. And then we're going to come with Pull It on, I think I have the prototypes here. Yeah, we're going to go out with this. This was their comeback album. Well, there's three of them. This is 1987. They had an 1986 run on MTV where they showed the episodes in succession. Then everybody wanted to know who the hell the Monkees were. They wound up touring and selling out and having hits again, like it was 1966. 20 years later, they put out this album, and we're going to make it a gatefold. And it's going to be on bubblegum colored vinyl, like pink, and then like a blue swirl, like colored like that. And this is going to do very well. And the people love, the Monkees fans really dig this album. It's a pop album. It's kind of like English alternative sounding on some of the tracks. The guy, I think he's produced, Squeeze produced it. But it's a different sounding album. There's a Mott the Hoople track on there, Every Step of the Way. Most of the other songs are written by some other folks. But it's a pretty cool album. And then their final album, final, was the quartet. So you get all four back. Justice. We're going to do this on 2 shades of vinyl. It's going to have a gatefold cover, like thus. And this is their, unfortunately, this is their last studio album. They never made that last album with the 3 of them or the 4 of them. And now it's just, unfortunately, they're gone. But Mickey's still here, and he's playing shows every day of the week. I see this guy everywhere, all over the country. And if he's not playing a concert, he's doing a fan fest or a Comic Con or something, because he's been on television since the mid 50s. He started as a little kid and circus boy. 10 years later, he's a monkey. And 20 years later, he's a monkey again in 86 and hasn't stopped. So the Monkees have been going since 1966. And again, I'll close by saying they're the nicest guys in the world. There you go. That's the beginning of the year. So get ready. Start looking at some really cool things. Behoove you to go to FridayMusic.com. Check us out. Ask Louie. Louie knows.
That's right. That's right. And I'll have the link to Friday Music down in the description of the video. Thanks so much, man, for coming on to the show. We wish you a happy holiday, and we look forward to having you back on the program again. And just as we come to a conclusion, folks, FridayMusic.com is where you can find the albums we talked about today. You'll find the albums for pre-order and also available for purchase at FridayMusic.com. Joe
Take care,
Friday,
folks. Till
thanks
next
a lot
time.
for joining the
Peace.
program, man. Really appreciate you being on.